since August, and leaves late December. He's got a good taste program back to Australia. And Cincom has been doing a bunch of work with Seaside to try and get that as support state of the product, build some interesting stuff on top of it, try and make some headway in the broader web development world with that. So Michael's going to talk about that and other stuff. So, thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
It changes actually as the presentation goes on. So, for those of you who haven't done web development recently, the web development world sort of changed in the last 5 years, or even less, where the web browser and its development libraries have matured in a significant way, such that there's now a system called Web 2.0, which is a conglomeration of new web technologies and techniques, and more socially aware web development. And one of the things that came out of this was a framework called Ruby on Rails, which put Ruby on the map in a major way. And in many respects, that left some Smalltalk books going, us too. One person in particular, Andy Brown, a Ruby developer, liked Smalltalk so much, he ported his framework from Ruby to Smalltalk and called it Seaside. So it is a Web 2.0 framework, and the idea was to throw every single rule about web development out as much as possible. Instead of having strong URLs that meant something, you had dynamic URLs that meant something to the server. Instead of hard coding or separating your HTML and writing HTML, you write Smalltalk code. And instead of having separate HTML files and servlets in Smalltalk code, you have the source for the HTML in Smalltalk code next to the code that actually does the actions. So the servlets are in line with blocks. So what that means, we'll see as we do this demonstration, building this sort of web application, seeing what Seaside can do. As well as that, recently, it's beyond that. So it's completely in the dynamic realm. It's not really possible to make highly optimized, fast throughput applications with this completely static HTML. That's not what Seaside's for. Seaside's for dynamic applications where if it's fast enough, it's fast enough. Turns out most applications feel it's fast enough. I mean, there are very few situations where you actually need to go out of Seaside's regular development environment and do something specific.
On the client or on the server? Do it store itself to the client?
No, it actually runs on the server. You push JavaScript to the client and run that JavaScript on the client. And that's should be done in a very particular sort of way, using libraries like Spectaculars or Rootools or things like that. Plotkit is another one. We'll see examples of those as I go through it. And I'm really enjoy it. So just recently, management at Cincom decided it would be a really good idea if we took this framework that our customers are using and actually support it. And that's where this initiative started. As well as that, they decided they wanted to make a new product that was about building web apps quickly, in a nice way, using Seaside, and not really having to be really in-depth with Smalltalk to get the advantages of Smalltalk, Seaside, and all that sort of stuff. So our work in the Seaside team has been about supporting Seaside, getting it to a state where we're quite happy to support it, and then also integrating the Grok database access stuff. I think most people who are here will in one fashion or another. And getting that to a supported state as well, and then joining the two together in a kind of typical CRUD application sort of fashion that Ruby on Rails does very well. So we're not really at odds with Ruby on Rails. I think if you like Ruby on Rails, you're really going to love this stuff. So it's kind of complementary to the dynamic.
I don't have a sense of how big Ruby on Rails is. I mean, I kind of hear the hype and stuff like that, but I'm thinking maybe I'm not looking at the right cross-section. Like, how big is it? Like, for real, like I've heard about it, like I've heard of Ruby a long, long time by Lake Thomas, and then I remember hearing from Tim O'Reilly when it was like picking up and, ROR, and now it seems to be all over the place, and I'm thinking, who is really like are any of the big websites using it? I don't think so.
I mean, one of the tricky things there is when you say big websites, some of the more recent startups like Twitter.com use Ruby on Rails. And it's, by any consideration, ridiculously big now.
Yeah.
And that's, a very interesting thing. I guess one of the things about Ruby on Rails is it gets you up and going very quickly. But the other good side of Ruby on Rails is that it's slow, and the more popular you get, the more performant it becomes.
Yeah.
And that's okay. There's got ways to deal with that. But as soon as you get off the rails, which is Ruby on Rails, their idea is that you follow rail tracks and everything's going to be good. As soon as you get off the rails in Ruby on Rails, you sort of left behind in terms of how to do things. So that's not really what Ruby on Rails is.
Let's say at Smalltalk Solutions, there was a great quote. Someone inadvertently. We had Chad Fowler, who was written some Ruby and Rails books. And he described he used to work for GE, and he said then the managers would never have even considered using something like Ruby on Rails. Now, well, they still wouldn't use it, but that's because they're stupid. So it kind of, I think in the big corporate world, there's not a huge amount of uptake that we do see in things like startups, where people want to get started, where getting going quickly is the most important.
Right, so it patronizes all the common things about cloud applications. It patronizes your database access. It patronizes with an active record pattern so that database tables, columns, map to listed variables. It patronizes the SSP, XSP, JSP, ASP pattern into a nice template engine that can actually reuse things. So that's where they're coming to. So Ruby on Rails doesn't actually do anything fantastically new. It pulls together all the good ideas into a set of tracks that you can follow very quickly and get things done well. So as soon as you want to get off those tracks, that's when you've got a problem. So Seaside is kind of the opposite problem, where you can do anything you want really, but there are no tracks. Because it doesn't come with a persistence story, it's one of the major problems there. And Warp actually fits that space really well. Warp is the start of popular. Fair to say that? Yeah. But on top of Warp, Alan wrote Active Record, which is the Active Record pattern again on top of Warp, and we use that now in our Seaside stuff. So I'll show you that. So getting started, I'm actually in a VisionWorks 7.6 pre-release image here, and this is what it will be like-ish when 7.6 comes out. There's a new category in the parcel manager for Seaside web development, and we've populated it with all the common packages that people use in Seaside, and we're going to run through a bunch of these and see what they're about, so you get an idea of what Seaside is capable of and what we're going to do in the future. So getting started with Seaside is actually as simple as saying, what is Seaside? For anybody who's actually used Seaside in the past in Smalltalk, this is a fairly big departure from what I used to learn it. Now it's easy to learn it. That would be parallel on the Mac OS X, swapping memory. And there we are. So loading Seaside brings up the web browser, and we're actually in the Seaside environment straight away. This is what they call the dispatcher, which is the front page for the development environment in Seaside, which you access to all the programs that are loaded. In this case, we can look at, say, the examples programs, and the quintessential example in Seaside is this counter program. So the counter program is designed to demonstrate what they have in Seaside factory, which is really important in there because people have this thing called backbuck, and they can do crazy things like go back in their shopping cart and reorder something from the shouldn't. But you really want to save the state at each page in some sorts of transactions, and you don't really want to have to walk off the page to do it. Seaside does that for you. So you have the ability to jump back various pages and continue as if you were there. One example that I really liked once I saw was a dialogue, a kind of workflow dialogue where you ask for color, and then you ask for name, and it showed you the name of that color, and you could just go back and change the color, the forward, the name is still filled in, so you don't care about that, that would bring you back to where you were. I followed that thing. Now, if you actually had a transaction of rank drop in different directions, so it asks you if you're male or female, and then asks particular questions based on whether you're male or female, that execution path is saying you can go back and change the sort. And then, of course, you've got the opposite of that, which is the ability to isolate transaction areas so that you can't go back and change things, especially when you're doing some sort of database. So that's the counterexample, which demonstrates the ability to state-free stage like that.
Is that the core of Seaside as far as the concept being able to go back and forth?
That's one of them. There are many things that make up Seaside. This is called continuations. Continuations save the process, and at each page flow, then you get a continuation. That's not required. You can actually not save the state. If you're actually conscious about memory usage and session life and all that kind of stuff, then you can choose the way you want it. The bigger thing about Seaside is the fact that it's dynamic and you've got Smalltalk. So what I'm clicking on here is a Halo button. And it's a bit like having Halos in Sweep where you can click the middle button and see access to the information that works. So this is the total Halos here. It's the analogous version of that. And it shows the component that's actually drawing what we see on the screen. And it gives us access to browse the class as well. So we've got like the classic Smalltalk browser in the web browser that lets us go with code. So this states method says when we go to this page, we need to save itself. That's what's doing the backtracking.
Oh, you're in the web browser?
Yes. I certainly am. Here's read the content on. So this is the other big part of Seaside. The ability to generate the page using Smalltalk code and link in the actions in the same spot. So the first thing we see on the page is a heading that shows the counter. And that's what that's doing. It's like HTML, put out a heading with the counter. Then HTML, put out an anchor with a callback. And we give the Smalltalk block. And it then does the magic underneath the hood to register an entry point back into the system for that session, for that continuation. So we can do that action to go to the page. So in terms of actually building applications, cause and effect is very clear in Seaside. I think probably it's the biggest advantage of that web framework is joining these two things together. Then we go with this anchor, put out a touch base. Put out space, put out another anchor, put out another callback that does entries and the like. So this is like some approach in many respects, and it's really going to change the code. There's this off there which is obviously very good. And now we have the code that says, oh, here's something that's really hard to work on. We've just gone off to a different part of the program, and we've done a whole bunch of action. And we're going to close this and jump back to where we were. This is arbitrary workflow without having to remember where we were. It sort of remembers it because of the process with continuations. That sort of workflow takes a lot of work in most web applications. Happens naturally to see something. So now if we hit the minus button, we actually break the program and we get the debugger. We hit debug. We get the Smalltalk debugger up, and of course we get this problem. So this is the wonderful thing about programming on the web with Smalltalk. You fix the code up and hit resume, the web page loads the action. When you're actually building your application, you get very rapid application. Sort of happening.
But this behavior, Michael, is because you're running on the server, right? Like the debugger that popped in the back was on the server side.
Yep.
Okay.
However, I'm kind of toying with a web-based debugger at this point. I can't really promise that there's such a thing will actually come out, but it'd be very nice to have, because then you could do completely distributed collaborative development in a web browser with your peers, which is something you can't do easily right now in most Smalltalk environments.
The first one was that, but the one that popped up in the back was a regular debugger, Smalltalk debugger.
So this is the screen that you got.
That's
you get the full stack or debugger. So I would like to replace this guy with a more debugger, but again, no problem. Let's check my things over the show here. So the next button here is inspector. So this is like having a Smalltalk inspector, and we can go and change values. And it updates the object, and when we go back to the page we're on, it's now 60. Neat. Having the inspector there, having the browser there, really the only tool we have is we'll get there. So, closing that gives us the ability to be nice and dynamic in our development. And it also, if someone comes up to your web application and they've never seen it before, and they don't know how it's composed or how it's built, and you've got a fairly complex screen, poking the halos gives them an immediate view to their application. and then see what builds up, what does what, jump in there and have a
Question, you're looking at editing occurred in the same tab, right? You've got it set up so you could have your debugger encoded in one tab and your
yeah, you can do that. So if we
display.
a little clicked just then, and now I have my running application here in the browser. Right, so it's the sessions, the copy across, etc. Seaside is actually set up in such a way that you can have sessions that keys or parameters in the URL. So if you wanted to build an application where a user builds up some piece of content that they're happy with, they're going to use for a friend, if you've got the sessions sitting in the URLs, you can literally copy and paste that URL to a friend, and they can go come into your session, into that configuration, which has some very interesting application ideas sort of go around this ability to share live sessions with other people.
And with those halos, how would you turn those off for a real runtime, like a real application? You don't want your web users pulling up halos and looking at your code.
That's right. This thing down the bottom here that shows us the render time, let's terminate the running process, configure, make new sessions, etc. That's the development time tool. When you turn on deployment mode, it disappears. And that's basically.
So is this done through dynamic context, dynamic scope, that you just insert a wrapper around the current session?
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. It's a presentation pattern. So every component has presenters, and those presenters can be wrapping presenters, so on and so forth, wrapped up as many times as you want. In fact, when we go to this browser here, this close button at the top here, this title, isn't part of the normal browser. That's actually a presenter wrapped around it so that we can get back to where we came from. And actually there's some dialogues that we can play with as well, which is the same sort of thing.
One more question with that browser.
Yep.
The pane on the far left, is that categories or is that as a packages?
That's categories. This is code ported straight from Squeak. Okay. We do use categories for this stuff. And the version I have, which I'm not showing you tonight, does show packages in fact.
Okay, because I thought that Travis was removing categories.
Oh yeah, categories are pretty much gone. I don't think there's a way to get the categories now in the RB76. You can still get the parcels view, which is kind of anachronistic in a way as well, since parcels and packages are effectively the same thing. But
Yeah, this is completely different.
Right. So, resource, are you guys removing categories altogether? You're going to categorize classes as packages, or?
yeah, almost. Classes do have categories still, so down here. But this information basically isn't used by the development environment. You can't go up to here and say, browse categories, explore. Yeah.
Okay, so basically packages are the new categories, or the other way around that.
Sort of. I mean, there's nothing work there. So we can have a look at the source code that produces this page as well by clicking on this little S here versus the R for render. So that's the rendered version, this is the source code version. And it shows us how the page is sort of put together. You can see that it's created this dynamic URL here for the plus and minus actions. Another great tool for developing web applications is the Firebug, which has this guy down the bottom of your windows in Firefox, which lets you inspect and explore the HTML. Anyone who's used VA, Visual Age, Smalltalk, might remember and the ability to inspect the widget by clicking inspect widget and then hovering the mouse over something and it pops up with the inspector. And we get something similar in Visual Works. Well, that's basically the same thing in the JavaScript web browser with Firebug. But it exposes you to a bigger world in the browser that is normally completely hidden, which is the entire DOM structure. And this is where we get into the JavaScript world of dynamic objects as well. So most people don't know, but JavaScript is actually a prototype-based language. It's a dynamic language. I haven't had study typing or anything like that. So Smalltalk and JavaScript actually learn together using the world, which you'll see some of the power of that with respect to the libraries that are wrapped up in Smalltalk. Translate their calls almost directly over to JavaScript code client side. So you can program charts and animations and all that stuff easily in Seaside. So I think we get on with some of that stuff. See, and async. I'm just going to run through some of these libraries that have been written by the Seaside community that we've included 76 builds. To give you a good idea of stuff that we can do.
You say things like meetings, that mostly split. It's
expanded significantly. The Visualworks had Seaside for a while now in a contributed more support. We have customers using the production systems. Dolphin has had Seaside for a while, and Seaside 2.8, which was just recently released, is in the process of being ported to the latest version of Dolphin as well. There is a project with Lucas-Smith for Smalltalk actually, at Seaside. I'm not sure how that's going. The Visual Age, Smalltalk is promising. VA Smalltalk, I should say, is promising Seaside in the next release as well. So yeah, it's everywhere right now.
And also Gemstone.
Hey, don't forget, Gemstone in a major way has picked up Seaside and they've got their new product launch.
So do you think the Seaside project will be portable between all these Seaside implementations across different small pods?
Yeah, I mean, it could very well be. Now, we have a split package, which is a split compatibility package that we load in to support Seaside. And that means that all these components work that have been written in split work in Visualworks. And Object Studio, I should mention Object Studio there on Seaside as well.
Correct me if I'm wrong, and all the official original source is Squeak. And then all the other vendors take it from the Squeak version and bring it into their own environment.
And
the Seaside, yeah. There are some components that were written in Visualworks.
Right, but the official source is Squeak.
Yeah.
just out of curiosity, how much Squeak do you actually import to make Seaside work?
Not so much. The Seaside community is very aware of porting, and they make it their responsibility to make Seaside as portable as possible. They have a Seaside platform support class where they put the input development package, and they have certain programming guidelines they follow. For example, Squeak has the initialize pattern on object. Not on Smalltalk has that, I believe. So they avoid it in Seaside. They make sure that they don't assume that that's there. So that's very good of them. I mean, it's fantastic if you're going to make a library that's probably across Smalltalk, so you need to do that sort of thing. Coincidentally, I would love it if we had an initialize pattern. I'm not sure if that'll happen too.
The Gemstone guys, I think they were talking about importing a fairly big chunk of Squeak, but then I guess they read Seaside from Monticello.
We do too.
Oh, so you have to import Monticello as well?
We don't import Monticello. We have a simple Monticello importer. So we take the source code straight from the Monticello HTTP repository and publish it into the store with very minimal changes. We put the code into namespaces, into a package, set up prerequisites, that sort of thing. There's a couple of minor patches in there, but it's almost an exact copy of the code from Squeak's Monticello publish.
Are non-speakers actually heading to Seaside?
Yeah, definitely. One of the components, short components, is starting to work, and it's also available in Squeak now, and by Ritual Boris. I'm not sure, maybe I'm wrong there. But yeah, that's definitely more the other way. I think we'll see more of that as time goes on. Especially the more easy it is to use Seaside in other environments, the more we'll see lots more experimentation. Yeah, this is a very good project for that. AC stuff. So, asynchronous callbacks is one of the hallmarks of Web 2.0, where instead of doing a web request to the server and rerendering the entire page, you do a micro request to the server, get a micro change back to the client and update a little bit of the page. So one of the results of this is the ability to click on this three here and have this bit of the page update. I wanted to show you how dynamic this is. So we see here we have the multiple selection here with this multi-select 3. As I click on this button here, it highlights in yellow temporarily, telling me that part of the page has changed. So this is a combination of Seaside doing asynchronous callbacks and web browser doing dynamic updating, and Firebug telling us that things changed. So it's very subtle, but it's actually a dynamic environment, which is very nice. So instead of doing this whole as well as jump, all post, reload that page, re-render that page, you've actually got RPC, which is what people always really want to do. a long time had it. But more importantly, the thing that changed, we kind of had this for a long time, the thing that changed was the implementations of doing this became cross-browser compatible. And when that happened, Web 2.0 really started to that. You could write web applications that behave the same on all the major browsers, and that made it work out. Yep.
I don't know much about web development, so I might ask a silly question, but I'm going to ask anyway. So, like, if I were to, like, compare with, like, let's say Ruby on Rails, or the good old way to do web development now, is it, what you're presenting, is Seaside doing something that is not possible to do in, like, a standard web development way, or is it something that is very convoluted to do in a standard development? I'm supposing that would be the answer.
Yeah, so there's a combination of things there. I mean, a lot of it is to do with how much effort you put into it.
Okay.
So with continuations, any workflow on the website, for instance, that generally was a go-to scenario in the development. Go to this page, now go to that page, now go to this page.
Yeah.
Whereas in Smalltalk, now you can write code that says, ask them this, ask them that, now show them this. And it's literally more like a go stuff than a go-to. And that is a whole lot of things. And that's one of the big advantages when you see something like those people in browsers.
Okay.
You can build these transactions easy. So this is the async stuff, changing the async stuff this time. Right there. So moving on from async, that's just a core component of doing good applications in the web world these days. Move on to Spectaculous, which is like the next evolution of this sort of dynamic update, where web programming starts becoming really fun. So Spectaculous has a very virtuous sort of website, and it's a big JavaScript framework for doing something on the website, such as animations and Ajax callbacks and form controls and drag and drop and all that sort of stuff. And that's all been wrapped up in Seaside in Smalltalk code. So if you see something like this dynamic counter here, which is updating only this tiny bit of the screen, we can go into the source code. So this is another kind of Web2 sort of thing, using Scriptaculous to embed what's called a lightbox in the middle of the page, so you can still see what you're doing in the background. It looks clear this is a dialog, yet this is an Ajax thing. So it's doing lots of micro updates to the web server without too much effort. So I'm going to explain this code here. This code is actually out of date. It's an old version of the code, but it's still good enough to explain. What we're doing is we have a HTML span here that includes the count. So this is like the header we saw before. We're rendering the count on it, but we give that element an ID so that we can talk about that element on the client side. Then we have an anchor, and we say, on the click of the anchor, put out this HTML updater that will update that counter, do the increase and render the counter again. So that bit of code moves to the client as JavaScript. And it gets transformed into JavaScript with a callback to this Smalltalk block on the server side to give it new HTML for that one step. Right? So this kind of code that you would normally write in regular web development is a lot of work. But here we're more look down to I want to update it, I want to update this ID, and I want to do it by doing this callback. So then we do that again for the minus, and the end result is when we click this plus button, we get a background update sent to the server, which sends back just a change for the server. To see that in action, we can look at the bar console. Whenever we hit plus, we see another post come through. If we look at the contents of this post, we see that it just contains the number that was the response. And the request just contained the action ID that we pressed. And that's it. That's the entire communication bouncing back and forth between the server and the client. Which is why Web 2.0 applications are a lot faster than classic Web 1.0 applications.
Sounds like a value folder then, so if there's another screen, open that on, it would update.
No, it's not doing a push, it's directly in response to the action from this point. But if another action occurred on another thing that was following with the same object, updated that part of the screen, you could do that. There is a technology, or not really a technology, a technique called Comet, which is available for Seaside in a very, very alpha form, which allows the web browser to know when something's changed on the server and do that kind of update. But we're not going to go there at this point.
Another question, how did you get two different sessions looking at the same object? Is it like a session stack, or is it bigger than that?
Then you just have to use regular Smalltalk code to share objects, and whichever way you sort of correctly. It's no specific technique for sharing objects like that. It's all on the server side anyway.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. On the server, is your state based on your session?
Yes.
So you share sessions between the users.
Yes. Well, in this particular case, the URL here is the session key. This S equals English. That is no session object. If I give you this URL, you will come back to this page with the same count as I have right now.
And sessions expire.
Yeah.
So you can't come back to that 2 weeks from now.
You can, if you program it right. So if you've decided that your program is going to work that way, for example, WDB. You may have heard of or seen WDB. It's kind of a really big Seaside 2.0 or Seaside 2.8 application. Uses lots of Ajax, lots of spectacular stuff. It's really quite fantastic. It looks wonderful. What they do is they save your image on their server. So your URLs that you're using persist. So when you go back to one of those URLs with yours, it fires up your image again and it's there.
Do they actually save the image?
Yeah, they really do.
When you log out, though, right?
I don't know exactly when they do it. I think they do it when you haven't used it for a while. So instead of timing out the session, they time out the image.
So if your browser crashes, you may still
Yeah, you can get back to it, yeah.
to the previous point, though, right? Or unless you remember the URL and you do it immediately, there you go.
Well,
Okay, so it
your applications could offer them points they were at as well. If you want to be really smart. In an application I built before moving to Cincom, if you crash like that and then log back in, it will offer you where you were to jump back. Yep.
Sure, there's two mechanisms. It's basic and stuff, right? The free script package.
Yep.
Underneath the scenes, is it using the same mechanism, or is script package totally different?
Yeah, at the very end of the day, they're both using what's called the XML HTTP request log in JavaScript on the front side. So yes, same technique at the end of the day, but the Scriptaculous library is more powerful. It gives you a lot more options for your basic response.
So Scriptaculous is not Seaside. Scriptaculous is an Ajax library from somebody else.
Okay, that's the question. So Scriptaculous, is it a demo of all that you can do with Seaside, or it has nothing to do with Seaside, but we can, I'm confused.
Yeah, so it's a library that's separate from Seaside that's been wrapped up to be used from Seaside. So what we're looking at right now...
I'm really small for that.
No, it's written in JavaScript.
No, so what you're seeing right now is Smalltalk code wrapping up the JavaScript. So we're actually driving Scriptaculous from Seaside. Okay? And Scriptaculous is driving the web app. So,
okay, but I guess my question is, when I went to see this site from my web browser, I was wondering, is it something that interests people? Is it something that interests people outside of the Seaside?
Yes, Scriptaculous is used by Ruby on Rails as well, and several other frameworks.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
so you're showing with that you can interface from Seaside to all of the features that are demoed there.
Yeah. Okay. So an example of that is this program here, you can highlight, and anything that is this kind of tag, it will highlight in yellow and fade out. So the code in Smalltalk to do that is this. You have an input field here that we call a selector, and we're asking you for what kind of selector you want. We default for H1. When we hit the submit, we have an evaluator that triggers off our form, and it sends render evaluator on the side. So render evaluator here goes with the script selector, add that selector, and tell what to do when effect highlight. So what that means is that we wrap up the JavaScript call to make an effect on the front side, and that effect should be the highlight effect for all the selectors that we have matched. So we're driving this purely from Smalltalk code, and it transforms in JavaScript code and lots of stuff. So there's an inefficient clock that's actually asking the server every second for time. That's that. This is the same asynchronous stuff but being done here with these script activities instead. I'm just trying to drag and drop tonight. This is something that you generally can't do in web browsers without a nice modern library. You want to actually drag and drop nodes around, reorder them, put them in different spots, and have that sent back to the server so you can do that transformation in your actual node. We were talking about effects before. There are lots of pointless effects that come with these things. So, some of them can be used to great effect, but often you don't really use these. That's your quintessential annoying ad there. And here is just a piece of information. This is a piece of Smalltalk that generated enough JavaScript that you would capture events and render the events all in one stuff without having to put it in the source. That's Scriptaculous, and Scriptaculous is then used to great effect in many applications. In fact, I guess this view source one is a nice example. And I guess the best example of where you can see Scriptaculous action is WDB.
What's that called in?
WDB. So I'm not going to go into it now, actually. You should go look it up. WDB.org.com. Yeah. It's a web 2.0 application. It's a database spreadsheet, Microsoft Access U-Button type thing, and it's really easy to use. Actually, it's fantastic.
Well, it looks like a multi-dimensional spreadsheet.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And DABDB.
Yeah.
DABB, LDB.
Yep.
When you go to the main URL for Scriptaculous, can you show us what on the server gets what is inspired?
Yeah. Go back to the start of Scriptaculous here. Hold on that happens. You see SU alt text. So if you go and have a look at this program, it's render content on. It renders out the header, renders out the menu, and renders out the chart. So the header is that the graphics one, and that's literally a thing out of here with the logo and fires up a resource that is the logo from the URL. And the menu is based on the items that we actually have. Tabs. So we build up the tabs for all the different tests that we have. And the children is the content that we're substituting for stuff. So in this case, we're rendering out whatever that we've got. And then we also render out the show source steps. So we can show the source for whatever it is we're doing. And that's it. That's the main front page.
But the fancy format
CSS. Yes. So this program, which is what we can, includes include my libraries, SU library, and SU alt text library. And one of these will include the CSS that you see on the graphics.
and the tabs are where should have said we'll cycle through these tabs, not just there in the tabs object, right?
And initialize it.
There.
Making a selection of pages.
And is that written out like out there?
That's this
looks like
program.
something you're going to drag and drop.
No, that's this program that they wanted to do that sort of thing. But normally tabs use tab widget, but they didn't have tab widget connectors, so they just done it by hand.
Yeah.
One interesting point about Seaside is that they don't actually have HTML templates. All the HTML is written by Seaside.
Yeah. So you get better reviews, components, and pattern configuration, etc.
I guess I have some questions about that thing. I'm asking if you drag and drop bootloader or
There is one in the works by a South American guy at the university. The students I assume, and it's easy.
and it's not the browser, right?
Yeah. So theoretically, we could have the whole environment browser one day. Okay, so leading up to the next bit is the C# demo. And this pulls in a lot of these extra components that this was done by Michelle Benny's network. Features, things that you wouldn't expect you would normally be able to do in a web browser. The first of which is actually finding out charts and graphs. So this uses SVG, which is in one form or another available in most browsers now. And he's got examples of how you actually put that together in a Smalltalk code and output here. Which is very nice. So that was one thing we always
But isn't there an issue with SVG across browsers? Like,
so it's all hidden with Seaside. You don't have to worry about the cross-browser. Yeah.
So you can read the type of the browser from the HTTP request and do different things for different browsers.
okay, so you're not sticking SVG into the browsers right
No, if we go back to this plotKit example here, I don't want to label on each of these things too much, but here we make a plotKit data set, and then we make the various ticks that we want on there, which is our views around the sides.
Yeah.
And then we set that data set on a layout, which is a pie layout. We give it a radius, and we put the pie layout on a chart. And that's all we have to talk about as Smalltalk database. The library, the plotKit library that was written for Seaside, then does the rest of the work.
Where's the color chosen?
By default, the plotKit JavaScript library is like the string colors, but you can specify them yourself if you want. Okay.
So,
Sorry, just this one.
yeah. So, even though we're using the old visual works, but like why do we have to use that? All the assets that come up and that data and see. Why don't we just use something like that? Is that a
Well, at the end of the day, you're in a web browser, and the programming language you have to use to manipulate the UI in an advanced method, drawing pixels yourself, that kind of stuff, is JavaScript, not Smalltalk. But on the flip side, if you wanted to make a distributed application that did fancy stuff like this, I mean, I can play movies and do output blended rendering without any effort now. And it can even work on an iPhone. So there are significant advantages to actually building web apps instead of regular GUI apps. And if you were building a regular GUI app that was going to do what a web app did, then you would have to go in and basically build the network communications yourself. So you're in a web development environment, you're inherently distributed, you have to do it that way. So from the get-go, your program's going to be based around being self-reliant. When you build GUI apps, you actually have to be very talented and disciplined to do that work. At the end of the day, you can get a better program by doing your own open-door communications and your own GUI program. You can get a much better program. But you can build a program that works really well with this technology very quickly, and you don't have to get quite as specialized. At some point, you're probably going to want to learn JavaScript to build your own customized features on the client side. But either way, with doing it, they're big without having to learn that. And that's the advantage of having all this stuff wrapped up for you is you can just go to the tab which is that on the pie chart.
But this mapping that you mentioned between Smalltalk and JavaScript, how low down can it go actually? So
Pretty low. I mean, I read a library once called SimpleWeb, which basically was an XML tree on the server side, and it would send the XML tree to the client side, and then it would have a hash object, which was the same as the JavaScript object, and any message you sent to it would send to the client side. So I was basically writing Smalltalk code that emitted JavaScript and XML on the client side. It worked. And then from there, it would build up everything into a GUI environment, which I never did, because it was just a good concept. But JavaScript objects are more like self-objects than they are like Smalltalk objects. They have no inherent defined shape. But that doesn't stop us in any way from doing that, because just because they have no shape doesn't mean they don't use the shape. When you have an XML HTTP request, it expects certain properties to be on it. So that can leave all those properties on Smalltalk. Yep.
Is JavaScript in any way inherently better than Smalltalk? Is it just that JavaScript? All the browsers know the JavaScript.
All the browsers know JavaScript.
The others they don't know Smalltalk.
We don't have an option there. Unless we use a different kind of smart client. And unfortunately, the best smart client around that's available everywhere on phones, on computers, everywhere, is a web browser.
So we use JavaScript because all the web browsers use JavaScript.
Right.
The universal web assembly language.
And we're kind of lucky that it's actually a dynamic language. If it weren't, then we would probably be kicking ourselves.
And now you get WPF coverage from Microsoft.
Yeah, that remains to be seen how well that actually ends up going. And
You refer to it as the web assembly language, which is becoming increasingly true. One of the things we're seeing at UPSLA is people implementing other things like CLR on top of JavaScript.
There's a scheme interpreter. Scheme list interpreter done in JavaScript.
yeah,
Which, starts to really sound like IP over carrier pigeon. The layers of inefficiency there are incredible.
Just a question of interaction between
We know our own browser in Smalltalk. Would we actually gain anything? I mean, get back to the losing portability. We got rid of the JavaScript by creating our own browser in Smalltalk. Would we gain anything at all?
you would have to, well, okay, you'd have to buy into the mythology that it's a better language.
Yeah,
We all do, right? And that we can actually do a better job than what's being done, which we all believe. But the fact is that it didn't happen.
The other thing is that Smalltalk's always been able to sort of lead very quickly by adapting to whatever everybody else is doing.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't have to live with working with JavaScript. There's really no choice.
Well, I think the way things are going now, pretty soon you're
Trying to
going to
understand.
see a desktop inside the browser. You're going to see the start bar and
I
bottom.
understand that.
No, he's not joking.
People are doing that. I understand that we're stuck with JavaScript. Just trying to get a feel of what we're losing by being stuck with that. Maybe nothing at all.
Yeah, but it looked, from what I saw, from what I'm getting at it, and I saw the work that Daniel Gals is doing at UPSLA.
With the live kernel.
Yeah, the slightly kernel thing. He is basically redoing the morphic stuff that is in Squeak, but right into JavaScript right now, right? So I mean, it looks like it's the impedance mismatch between a dynamic language like Smalltalk and JavaScript is pretty good, actually.
Yeah, the thing about JavaScript in the web browser is you track. 100% absolutely track. If you want to do scala vector graphics, your browser has to know scala vector graphics. Otherwise, you do it in the most inefficient way possible, so microserver will be very slow. In language like Smalltalk, you know traps. You can really do anything you want. And that's one of the lovely things about Smalltalk, is you can really do anything you want. There is actually permission model in JavaScript for properties. So if you go and attempt to modify certain properties on a window object, you get errors. So you don't have access to that. Yeah, it's a real sandbox, more so than the JVM was.
There is a downside.
Downside.
It's always been, like, HTML's always been a reporting tool, basically. Just dump stuff out, whatever.
So,
The other thing that also to realize is that these libraries, there's a lot of JavaScript too. Oh, there's a lot of bugs in there.
There's like one meg deploy your application.
And you run into a bug, you need to fix it. Well, right? It's still a book. You are dealing with language and
and it's a language that doesn't actually really have a bug.
yeah, and that's kind of the gist.
That's one of the reasons why we apply it.
The trade-offs being building it in just
So what's actually fascinating is that all these libraries that define their own object model on top of the prototypes.
Yes.
So now, can you, for example, combine new tools with spectaculars? Not just having both on the same page. I mean, just reusing objects.
Oh, yeah, you can do that. I mean, theoretically, one of the things that, we'll get to your question in just a second, you've been struggling to get it out there, is that you can extend objects in JavaScript in peculiar ways that are all completely compatible. And every base JavaScript framework for modern JavaScript, like Neutrals, Prototype, Spectaculars, jQuery, they all do it differently and they're all compatible. However, Neutrals 1.2 Beta 1, which just came out, doesn't modify object. So, in theory, although nobody has said it true, you might be able to have neutrals and prototype/spectaculars loaded at the same time and get all the advantages of having both. And that would be a wonderful thing.
Unless there are any conflicts between.
Well, I've been looking at the neutral stuff, and it seems they've been very carefully renaming things to better names that just happen to not compete with prototypes and switch ups. Which is weird again. Okay.
The advantage of having both, including 2 megabytes of JavaScript interface.
Well, one of the reasons, I didn't really want to go here in this presentation, neutrals is far superior JavaScript library foundation. It's smaller, it lets you do more, it's actually user classes on the client side. So I'm looking into importing that to Seaside right now, much like Scriptacular's to Seaside. Anyway, the question.
Yeah, just a quick question on the connection between the browser and the server. And so the browser makes a URL where somehow the server translates that into a call to a Smalltalk class and method.
Yeah.
And that just fires and services no response to that.
Great.
Will any web server just pass on the CGI request at this point? Sure.
Yeah.
So it's a separate library version. It just takes a standard HTML CGI.
It's just, completely standard.
The easiest thing to do is actually set up a Windows proxy patches people request code. Unless you're using IIS, and then once we use that nice happy thing.
Yes, exactly, which means every different web server has to have its own hooks on it. So CGI is the easiest way to do it, but do you use CGI or
in this one, I'm actually talking directly to small directly to OpenTalk HTTP. That's very fast. And I actually wonder if under stress, probably get fairly comparable benchmarks. But then, of course, you can't do dynamic stuff with patches. There were recently some statistics about speed on James Robertson's blog, comparing different versions of Seaside and different platforms to the products. And Seaside 2.8 usually works at 6.1 completely, only, and it was 10 times faster than anyone else. A lot faster. It scaled well. So, and that's not even discounting the idea that if you have some hotspot you really have to you've got to make some stuff out. So this is direct access. The only reason you wouldn't want to do this is if you've got a web service supporting multiple applications, in which case you then basically have a switch on router in front. So go off to this image, go off that image, go off and program and
Right, and then the session tag is allocated by the web server.
Yes.
So what do you do about resources that the city has to have pictures or?
Yeah. So there's a number of things there. Seaside comes with the idea of a library, and you load resources into the Smalltalk image and it turns it into items. But the URL scheme that you use to actually address those is relative inside the image. So what some of our customers do is they take all of their resources when they're ready to deploy, they put them up on Amazon S3, and configure separately runtime configuration say, this set of resources is actually only good. So you can move them around.
So you can actually put those on in a local directory on the server.
So, I mean, this was kind of a problem for Seaside in Swift, right? Because it was slow, and you really couldn't serve up all of your images in CSS from the image. OpenTalk HTTP doesn't actually have that problem. You can serve up the whole lot from here without too much trouble. And if you need to sculpt them, you can use it. So, bar graphs. So there's some nice simple bar graphs. Reflections is one of my favorite little effects that you can get from canvas jumps.
Yeah, that's why I want to go
This gibberish down here is like a reflection of the image. This is the image here, and this is being reflected. A simple fading example, but that doesn't look as cool as the crossfade example. This is actually something you can't do easily in the current Visual Studio environment. So there are advantages to doing this sort of programming.
I don't think this would work in MS4, right?
Yeah.
6, not 7.
It should work. I don't have 6 installed on this smartphone.
That's 6 exists for that.
I have no idea. Never even thought that would be a good idea to try.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
That way we think that.
moving on to the next thing, short components.
Michael, could I interrupt for just a second? I'm going to switch my tape.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, I'm going to integrate as well. So I've got, these are Windows next to 90 days. So that works.
Oh, you with VMware, I think you still get
And
on desktop.
Yeah, it looks like single window versions, which is incredibly
Incredibly what?
dorky. So we back on? Yeah. Okay, so this is short components. This is a big chunk of widgets that you can reuse in Seaside that look better than regular ones. So here is a live dialog that pops up on the page to inform people of things. Burn box. In fact, burn box will be a workflow, so say yes, it does something else. A nice little date picker. You can 16 there, 29 there, update the page, 29. Some lists here, so they went and made different kinds of lists. This is just an everything list, like normal with a filter. I can go and standing. And we get this filter down. So this is where you start picking up componentization benefits. You can reuse a widget that does certain behaviors for you. There's a list that batches them up onto pages.
Can these reuse the basic list as a component? Like, you have a list and then you wrap something around it to do the filtering and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Should use that.
Yeah. Okay. Dynamic files, so this is generating content on the fly as a resource. This is for SVG, it's generated on the fly. Shows photos. Rich content editing, so this is an example. I mean, whenever I build a web application, I've always wanted to have a rich content widget. And you always have to go and put it in yourself. But not anymore. You just use this widget and it's the simple. And if you do back, HTML in space. It's very running out there. A nice little spinner if you want to tell your user that you're kind of busy, and then sort of grab the very clear that was meant to be like that. I'm not sure what was ideal was meant this object based on what should be some sort of test. Context menus. So we need to be able to have context menus. So we're going to build an application on the web that we have that. And tabs. We definitely want good looking tabs. So these are the kind of XP sort of tabs here. This is actually done using different styling, so it's the same tab code, just styled differently.
Can you set up the tabs down the side, or they have to stay on the side?
Look, you can do whatever you want, really.
Well, I mean, parameters.
This widget doesn't have that option.
You probably have to use pictures for the tabs.
If you wanted to tilt it, you can actually use a canvas and draw on an angle, but that's pretty tricky. Like you use SVG to draw.
Oh, okay.
This is a nice looking table that they got. Let's check down the trees and this multiple hierarchy. This is a non-Ajax tree, by the way. So the Ajax tree runs a lot faster because it only has like a little bit of page.
So that's okay, the whole page, everything.
This one is, yeah. So it actually runs surprisingly fast considering that it's doing.
Yeah, the thing is that.
Which is the entire, Smalltalk hierarchy here. Okay, so that's script take with the short event. Now, I'm going to change gears now. We're going to move off demonstrating what Seaside is and does and show how to build something. And we're going to make a simple blog server because everybody likes to make blog servers using the database and Seaside. So, you just prepare that.
Next thing will be re-implementing bottom feeder.
Someone had to mention that.
recording it, we have to.
I make it a personal challenge to get James Robertson to mention one computer on as many internal conference calls as possible.
That's a challenge.
Getting hard. Okay, so this is the same stuff, but everything's preloaded, and I've also got some stuff included that is the Active Records, Law itself, and a thing called Seaside Scaffolding, which is new and not out yet, which allows me to do CRUD applications, 4GL sort of programming, very quickly, very easily.
Correct.
Right, create, read, update, delete. Yeah. And yeah, so this is actually nothing new for any Smalltalk. Everybody's written this kind of application a million times over. But it's what Ruby on Rails excels at. So in terms of being able to pull in people who are used to Ruby on Rails and introduce them to the advantages of Seaside, we need to be able to do what they can do. So we need active record, we need scaffolding, we need migration.
You also need to generate administrative sites automatically.
Yeah. We tend to.
The way Django does.
Yeah. So I'm just going to set up my database information here. I'm going to go to my local Postgres database. And that's all I have to do to set up the database. It's just a global database for the EH. The intent is to allow you to do application level, and then we can click on the level database configuration as well. Yep. Yep. Default login. And we're going to create an application. Make ourselves a namespace. And we're going to pull in a bunch of things that I know I need. I know I want to talk about Seaside. I know I want to talk about Field. I know I want to talk about fallback records. My intent is to have a bunch of menu options and tools that just do this big thing. So you can just say, I want to build an application. I want the usual stuff for you. Which is what a Ruby on Rails likes to build giant template servers, which is massive bunch of code that you need not configure. I use inheritance. So I give you an empty class, which you can then change things on instead of generating access stuff. So we're going to have a database. Now, you can just hook up to any old database that already exists with a small technology and work with it. In this demonstration, I'm going to actually show you how you can build a database from it's really nice. This is my database system, and I'm going to say is that your active record database. And what we do in here is really make methods that are coded by convention, and I'll say table for posts. And this is a convention that says this is a description of the table of posts. And we'll create a field named ID with this type of serial, which means it gets generated. So we'll say primary key as well. We'll create another field named title. This is our blog post that we're going to be here. And we'll say it's Basha with 200 characters. And then we'll create a field of content. And we'll just say it's text, so it can be arbitrarily big, people have done blog post content. And finally we'll have a created element, which will be a text element. So, and that should be enough for now. So we'll make our Smalltalk model. Just post. And we'll subclass that off active record. And we're going to have title, content, and created font. Notice I'm not using the underscore there. We will map that form into that output. So we're just going to go access to this. Initialize the stuff that created on. And we have our model. So now we're going to create the database. We can make sure that that's set before we try to do this. Yeah, good. We open the workspace, so there's one set. And we go recreate tables. And you could just go create tables because there's nothing in there, but I'm not going to run. So that goes and runs, tries to drop things into a list, and creates a table. This is a Postgres database admin program. So, yeah, now we have our
you can actually get it from the map.
Yeah. So this is our tables created, it's got our fields, etc. It's got this range of primary here. We can go and try this thing out. We can say post find all, and we get back to nothing. There's nothing in there. So we now have our post object. So the next step is to actually make a user interface. Let's make a user interface to list all of the posts. Post list UI, and we're going to pick this up off this scaffold that we were looking at before. So we take the scaffold and generic list. And that's what we need to do to make that component. We need to initialize the product. And we can inherit all the initialization behavior. So just run that. And go back to our Seaside environment here. And we now have blog service sitting here as a directory in our dispatcher, which is the name of our package. And inside here we have posts, which is the list component we have. And it comes up using the fields that we know we have, title, content, created on, and nothing in the list, permanent data. And a new button that won't work because we haven't created a way to create new UIs yet. So we can do that pretty easily too. We can actually do the text from this. Do you hear from the syntax? Yep. Of the screen? Yep. So from generic list UI, we have a rendering paid thing here, render content outstanding, render out of actions, render out of list. Render out actions is just going render out an anchor with the new on it, the phrase object. Okay, so we can make our post edit page same way by inheriting our generic edit. And what we're going to do the view on as well. We can do this. We'll do the same initialize trick. And now we should be able to go here. And so it reflects off the database mappings to little types, and we don't have an editor yet for the daytime, even though we do have a daytime, which you can see, so I don't have to do that yet. And we can create a record. Save it. And we get back to our list, returning we've got our first record listed out here. Even on much of these, we've got various starts of our blog server. So, alright, the one thing I really want to show here was the idea of REST-based URLs. So now that we have this post, we also want a URL that we go to, because everything in Seaside has these crazy URLs that mean nothing. But you can ignore that in Seaside and actually build real URL interfaces. So this is the case where I can give an entry point straight to my record, view it, or edit it, and it works. And you can go and make different versions that put out JSON or XML, whatever you want.
Did you have to move construction for that? Or RESTful URLs?
You inherit that off the superclass. But I'll show you what it does because it doesn't do very much. So in the superclass, we have a method initial request, and we go, if the initial request has a path that the last bit is the number, because we got to our component, we know we're on our component, then go to our object class and find the things that I need. And that's it. That's how I make the rest of the URL.
Is there something there that automatically generates a page of all those pages so Google can log it?
That's essentially what the dispatcher is. But, yeah, you can do that. Yeah, this is all there, you can reflect off it. The entire description of how the database, the web server is configured is called the dispatcher. And the instance of the dispatcher is don't go dispatcher default, and it's a trick. You can do whatever you want. Okay, so let's put in comments because what's the point without people complaining about things? So we'll make a comment class. And get rid of title, we'll just put in paragraph like the comment. And initialize these things. I'm going to grab the initialize method I wrote over here because it tells what I want, so it's up timestamp. And we want to describe the comment table. Comments table, ID, that's fine. Third title will have 4 times. Content's fine, credit on's fine. And now we want to link back to the post table. So we make a post ID, table will create the domain. Post ID, type is going to be check. And then we want to make a foreign key constraint. And this foreign key constraint, even though it's one to many, call back the record we're going to figure out exactly. Add foreign key from post ID to the table named posts, field named ID. Secondary record, and that's it. Now we have things looked up. So post needs to know about its comments. Put comments on post, create accesses for that, and in initialize we will set comments to be notified. So now we need to go and recreate our database. And then we're going to put that here. Create tables. That's not that one key 22. Something like that in front. Actually, it is that. I just need to send it to the table. Right. There we go. So the table was manipulated, and in PTAdmin, you now have 2 tables. Comments and posts.
Does it capture any of the original information in those tables?
Not the way I just did it. The way to do that is to use migrations, which we're not going to show you. So migrations, you define a different database structure, and you can migrate from it.
So what you do is effectively drop the table and recreate it.
Yep.
Not even essential. That's what it does.
That's what it does. So we now have a new database. Now it knows that comments is one to many, so it's not going to try and show it in the listing. But it will try and give you an editor for it, which I haven't implemented yet. So you should be able to create comments from it. So what we're going to do is we'll just pick up this post. Okay. And we'll go to the view UI for it, and we'll remove this and put in an add comments button so we can add a comment. So this is our post view here, and if you look at the superclass, we have this common pattern of render content on, render actions, and render object. So we're going to have a new action, so I'll put that in render actions, and it will be add comment, and after that we'll go and pick up these super actions. So if we reload our page now, we'll have that comment on there. That won't work yet because we haven't implemented that comment. I could do the debugger trick, but I think I'll show you that before. So add comment, we're going to show our details how this magic workflow stuff works now. And we're going to create a new comment, and then we're going to say, call comment edit UI on comment. And that is basically like the go sign. When that component is finished, it will say enter, and it will come back to the next piece of code, which will go, if they didn't save it, quit. So this process is actually suspended. This process no longer runs in Smalltalk until the other page finishes and it comes back to them.
And this is where the continuations come in.
Yeah. So we're happy with this comment. We know the component wanted to add it. We add it to our comments and we save our object. So here we don't have this class yet. Let's create a class. This is a generic edit page as well. Generic edit page for comment UI for Uni, and that should be it. I should be able to have an edit comment. Good. Save that away, and we have comments here listed out with a comment. So that's not ideal. We can now put comments on it and come in and delete them right there. So what we're going to do is make a custom rendering for that. All of these attributes come from the class. So we want to take that and remove comments. Variable names is the method that we have here. Just drag that up here, call super variable names, and we'll copy without comments. Reload it, and that line is kids. If you want to read all the things, you use that sort of trick and move them around. So now we want to put in our custom rendering here of the comments. So take the render object on. We'll just call it super of that because we like how it's rendering the detail stuff. then we want to go, if our object has comments, we're going to do something. So let's put a horizontal rule in. This is how you make HTML in program. And then we want to put out a heading, and we'll make it a level 2 heading with the word comments. So object comments do comment. We put out a paragraph with the comments content dash dash the comments author dash.
Sorry, I missed the beginning of your presentation. HTML is just an intelligent string.
Yeah. And we'll separate them by a horizontal rule. And that should do us. Doesn't have a comma? We can do that. Contents. My version of Firefox is this one, the variable.
How do you write like regression test cases and stuff like that from this?
We're going to get that. Okay, so we go back to the here. Just make sure it's fixing all. There it goes. Recording that. Show how it goes. Comment. Any comment. Much like this in that.
Well, but there is nothing in the talk.
We didn't actually write away a comment when we read that comment. See? That would explain why nothing there. That's what demos are for, finding all the comments. So let's go and ask the comment class what its descriptor is. No. That explains it. First descriptor is a real one. And yeah, that's why the input has no name. So comments.
Sorry, in English.
It's not hooked up to the database. It doesn't know it should be a database class.
Oh, I see. So going for them.
There should be a table with comments.
No, it's very
So which class do you use to access the table?
The comments class.
Yeah. So this would be a certain comment. So comment class that's
Something like that. And there's a system here. So the system knows about comments and posts. It knows about the comments descriptor, post descriptor. However, class is class number topic. Starting with comment class. Okay. So how could that possibly be that? That's always a good question. What class is that one? Descriptors at the class.
well, maybe
That's what we do, correct?
you see if the class has a comment or a content. You get only comment
Oh, when I inspect it, I'm actually in a different process. That's not in the last session. So that doesn't explain why it's not actually staying. Shame. So what we'll do instead is play with our object. The comment should have an equal of someone and a content of some content. This is the logic of the system. We should be able to understand the story. Anyway, so didn't update because the record already existed. Now we have one more. Okay, so dynamics is going to sort it into the rest of the game states my demo. So now we have our comments coming out like that, create our comments, etc. And the last thing that we should do is make it more like a blog roll. Blog roll is a kind of vertical style, not table style. So we'll do that by changing the post list. Post list has ready list on, which creates a table, and we don't really want to do that anymore, so we'll override that and save that. We put out a heading with our object. That's title. And then we put out a div with the created on. That's that. And we put out a paragraph with the content. Take a look at that. Okay, so that's looking more like a blog roll-ish. But we kind of lost some of our behavior, so we're putting in the anchor here with a callback to view the object. With the header inside it. So that. And then we can click on these things and get the full view. So, and we really want to be able to get links and stuff in the content. So now we have one we said nothing about it. Okay. Well, there's the gotcha for today's demonstration. And update the customer yet. Okay, so it didn't keep the white space and it hasn't made the URL useful. So what we will do is take this paragraph inside here with line breaks and URLs without that context. So the last thing we need to play with is how easy is it to lock up some different styles on the page? Well, you should go and create a resource that is a piece of CSS that are very powerful people to change. If you just want to knock up stuff and experiment quickly, then you can just make the style method. So, and do something like headings. So red. That. Yeah, there we go. There's our lovely box. These are the empty ones. Okay. So then all that's done in question 3.
So that's it, we ship it, right?
Actually, this is probably version 2. When I can go directly.
So when all said and done, if we go back and look at our program, our model is empty, right? It's just the properties and initialized to set it up the way we use a model like normal. In terms of database interference, there's nothing. If you want to use the active record, but actually want to save and delete, you inherit an ID property, and you have stuff on the class side to do various finds. Find all, find where, find the sorts of things that you want of a model. But as a programmer actually making models, it's not getting my way, it's not forcing me to do anything too tricky. And everything we did on any of the UIs, we did solely for the purpose of customizing it into something beyond just a straight CRUD application. So that's also a very good sign. So really we could have had an application that's virtually empty and we shipped it as a pure code application. From here, this particular scaffolding framework and block integration, there are bugs to fix, there are features to add, new widgets for editing, integration with new frameworks, and we're also making this web velocity product, which is everything you see here without all of the stuff in Smalltalk that has nothing to do with this subject.
So this will be value added by Cincom, right?
Yes.
They will only backport it to Squeak or...
I can do if they want it. I mean,
One part,
works
like the
in
active
Squeak.
record part is
Yeah, and this other bit is actually just pure Seaside stuff.
So just some, okay, active record. Active record is implemented on top of Gore or...
Yep.
yes.
So all the, on every request, all the descriptors get built.
No, just when you set up the session.
Okay.
So when
Calling it active record is really not quite misleading because it makes it sound like it works like active record.
Yes. Okay. So it still uses Gore underneath, and you will generate descriptors for everything that you need to map.
Yeah, it reads the schema out of the database and matches stuff up to the class in the obvious way. And it also has the advantage that if you need to do something more complicated, you can write for one mapping that's more complicated and not huge stuff.
Right, so you can still drop down to pure Gore and do all the wonderful stuff like many,
this is where we differ from Ruby on Rails.
Yeah,
when you want to get off the Rails here and do complex database mapping, Dwarf is there. When you want to get off the Rails and do one-thread UI stuff, Seaside is there. And when you want to get off the regular web development path, Smalltalk is there. So that is where the real differentiator comes from. Not only does it run faster, there are tools to develop it, there's a good community, but it's not a complete lock-in in terms of the methodology of building applications. So things like the scaffolding, it's just pure Seaside code, pure Vault code, pure active record code, it's all portable. Web velocity itself won't be backported because it's product. And what it will hopefully be able to do is give you a very coherent web development environment where you're not confused between what is GUI programs, GUI tools, and web programming and web tools. Old web programming tools like Wave, all that stuff will just disappear for the developer because this is all we want presented. And that's what web velocity is. So there's no kind of contention between the library we make for web velocity and Seaside.
Yeah, from our point of view, we don't want to try and crowd out and squeeze Seaside. Where we would see the value add if we made people want to buy our stuff instead of using free stuff is that you have things like faster and stabler VM. You have more stable VM. You have the ability to connect to all of the other stuff that we provide. So now your web app needs to talk to web services or needs to talk to Oracle or whatever.
For basic stuff, there's nothing preventing people from developing in Visualworks and deploying on Squeak.
Right, but you might accidentally use some PWs. Then again, you're more likely to accidentally use Squeak as introduced. Squeak has a very extended idea of what base model should be like, which is where the portability layer comes into that. The majority of that stuff.
This is a separate product, but in your division, I think I'm not sure if I understand what this is.
Yeah.
It's not visual.
It's not visual.
Although all of it will be included in Visualworks, right?
Yes.
Seaside and most of the stuff is in Visualworks.
But this is something else.
The point of it being a separate product is to try and go after a different market. For a web developer, we would like not to shove Smalltalk hard in your face. There is Smalltalk there, but it's a little bit more auxiliary.
You're going to end up driving this through wizards, right, eventually, the way Ruby does it.
Which is.
Well, no, the mapping is in here. I think my model is going to be person employee.
They were guided through class annotations and generations checks.
So what you're saying is you're not going to give current customers the same, but now you can do better. You're actually trying to get a whole new customer.
Yes, the Seaside deployment in Visualworks and Object Studio is saying to our current customers, is Seaside. We support it, use it in our estate, as opposed to it's unsupported as functional.
Right.
Web velocity is, hey, people who've heard of the Seaside thing, here we go. It's not give Smalltalk a go, it's give the Seaside thing a go. It's easy. And it's only easy when we take all the models away, because, you get this significant what now problems are up in studio, Visual versus Weird, etc.
You're saying the Seaside is better than Debian Rails because BLOM, better than the other web development tools because BLOM. Oh yeah, by the way, it happens to be
small.
So,
And that's why it's so
is it possible that, like, I mean, the early adopter of that, the Ruby on Rails people, wouldn't be that scared of Smalltalk as other developers in the past were because of the big gap? Like, it's possible that the gap between ROR is closer to Smalltalk, that it's going to be easy for those. I mean, in a sense, the people that are now doing Ruby on Rails were really early adopter compared to what they moved out of, right?
Yeah.
It's a stepping stone that shouldn't be too hard.
I don't think you're going to get too many people like that because they work with Ruby, which is free, and coming to Smalltalk, it's very hard for them to buy anything.
Is web velocity is a non-commercial version available?
Can't really comment on that yet.
Well, I mean, will it be?
I think the intention is that there will be, but I can't really speak for that yet. I expect there will be.
And if I'm a commercial user of web velocity, do I have access to all of the other Smalltalk stuff that's available from Cincom Smalltalk?
No. No, it is a separate product. It is not a Cincom Smalltalk. And this was an interesting marketing sort of decision by management to say that this is Cincom Web Velocity, well, Cincom Smalltalk Web Velocity, to kind of remove that in-your-face Smalltalkism. You pick up, I mean, basically the idea is if you do become a hardcore Smalltalk or after using Web Velocity, you can very painlessly upgrade into full Smalltalk.
So is web velocity cheaper than full Smalltalk?
Don't know.
Okay.
So how soon in web velocity are you going to run into writing Smalltalk code?
Pretty much straight away, because you start writing Seaside code that's Smalltalk code. You can write block code that's Smalltalk code. The only thing you're going to write that isn't Smalltalk code is probably CSS.
Syntax support gender.
What's going to be missing from
Yeah, so is it just going to be a subset of the library, or?
Yeah, the idea is to bundle in the way that it's coherent for a person who comes up to this stuff and wants to do it, isn't going to get crowded with noise.
So you might have all the GUI code, but you're not getting the GUI.
And all depends on how capable the development environment is in the browser.
Yeah, I think you're pretty likely to have.
What's going to be missing?
What's going to be missing?
Not the term.
Not the term. That's true. I'm hoping to knock out Visual Player. I don't see any good reason for that in the velocity build.
Is anybody actually still using that?
Yes.
Yes.
Running large, important systems.
I know Visual Player.
I'll tell you something that won't be.
It's better that way.
Here is something that will not be in web velocity. Java asterisk. It will not be in web velocity, I guarantee.
Well, I'm just trying to think, when you say it's a different product, is it going to look like? I'm picturing this as just something canned, like you were saying, there's Wizard coming up, there's no web browser, there's no class language, nothing like. I guess I'm not sure if I understand.
He said there would be this, like William said.
Oh, no, I'm just trying to get a feeling, is it like this, or is it just what I recognize it?
And you really
Is it a custom, it's a thing, or just, it's just a
I mean,
tool?
a lot of the packaging type of decisions like that haven't been made. But what we would like to happen is that it comes up as something that someone who's a web developer might feel comfortable starting with, not, here comes this rather Spartan launcher which then opens up this rather baroque refactoring browser. And that if you're not already in this environment, you're going to get lost.
Anything, you have to go load the partial.
So what is,
Like, what is a partial?
so what exists now for web developer that would look, what would be the closest competition to right now that exists there, or is it a project that doesn't exist at all? Yeah.
In terms of like Seaside like development environments,
Or where development, like broader, whether it's compared to.
Yeah, that's a hard one. It is kind of unique. I mean, pushing it all into the code and getting those advantages. Yeah. I guess there might be something in this world, but not as a product.
I mean, in terms of things that work the same way it does. I mean, I think in terms of what's the closest competitor.
Because there's a difference between you're running like a tool versus like using Seaside as a framework. Now you're going to take that framework and just turn it into, put it inside a nice tool. That's what WebLocker will be.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you, I haven't used Seaside much, but I wanted to know where is the distinction between, like you seem to have done it all in Smalltalk, distinction between your backend, your application, and your XML page. If there is such concept, I don't know how it works.
So the HTML page is down the code. So that is good. The distinction between the framework and our application is in Squeak, if you've ever used it in Squeak, it's harder to see. But in VisualWorks, in this particular application, this is my application. Like it's separated by being in different packages. Right. So it's joined by dependencies on the namespaces, but it's a very clear distinction between system and program. And that, again, that's actually something we moved a lot.
But you never had to go and edit any HTML. You just did it all in your code.
Yes.
So actually, can you provide some insights into why this is done in code as opposed to the old plain HTML templates, which artists can produce without having to write any code?
Because with that, you have the advantage of having like GUIs, buttons and
that's just a GUI builder.
So let's take a complex page example here and look at what this page is actually composed of. So with HTML templates, not only do you have these different areas, but you've got to blend them all with JavaScript. Mm-hmm. And then you have to blend in the actual scripts on the JavaScript. So let's go with the JavaScript. So, and then let's not forget the fact that all of these callbacks are dynamic callbacks to blocks of code. So we're starting to get to a point where the actual advantages of HTML templates just completely disappear. And in fact, in the Web 2 world, I mean, the big argument for having HTML templates is to pass it over to the web developer guy who can make a nice pretty page. That doesn't happen anymore in modern Web 2.0 development. What you do is you give them HTML, and then you give back some CSS. And the CSS makes your page nice. So what you do in your code is you put IDs and classes on all of the nodes that matter, and the web developer takes that, applies a styling straight to the page as it is.
Yeah, it's just that it doesn't work that way.
It does. I'll completely argue against you on that one.
You have to nest divisions. For example, if you want rounded corners on certain divisions, you have to nest divisions inside divisions inside divisions.
No, not anymore. I think we've got curved edges as a plugin in Seaside now. You simply specify the style. The world has changed in that respect. DabbleDB, they sent off their UI to a guy, one of the more respected CSS guys who happened to be in Vancouver. And they got back a week later, and they added in a couple of extra tags into their UI, applied this CSS, and that was that. And that's really the way it was, isn't it? And a really good example actually is CSS and Dart. I'm not sure how many times I've seen brought up over the years, but they have one piece of HTML and over 300 different pieces of CSS and images to apply to that page. And the page was completely different in every single instance. If we had web access here, which I don't, I'm sure you, but
could you have your code set up in Smalltalk and then go to your HTML page and embed other code in there?
I think a guy
or like I'm thinking in a Java world sometimes like the import statements and so on if you want to put it in JSP. Is there something similar to that in the HTML that's generated by the Smalltalk?
So you want to pull it from another site?
Like
You mean tab library?
yeah, like if you want to put any other libraries in there.
Oh yeah, you just load those libraries in the Smalltalk. And that's how we're getting these widgets. And the alternative is if you want to reuse the component from another website, you can stick it in an iframe and include it in the source, that sort of thing. And another thing that,
And if you really, really want to do, templates, you have a mechanism for that as well.
yeah, you can actually use that.
Yeah, it's just that you have to build it yourself.
Yeah.
No.
Well, when you generate the HTML, you actually have to read it from a template and generate the HTML the way Seaside wants it generated.
No, Seaside can dump out anything you want. And that's one of this dynamic files thing here is I am having a method call on me and I'm going to produce something. And that something can come straight from template. And if you wanted to, you could actually register callbacks in Seaside from the template engine as well. I've never seen anyone do that, but I could do it, and I wouldn't encourage anyone to try and do that.
So I think that would take, several
So, I related to HTML generation, I have again a quite specific question. If you go to render content on, one of the methods there. So see the rendering actually changed, I think, starting with, I don't know, version 2.5.
Yeah. It's deprecated in 2.7.
It used to be very functional.
It used to look like this. You would do things like anchor with callback. So, and that would be what it was like.
Yes, so that was done in a very Lisp-like functional way, by passing blocks, right? So now, what is the reason for this change? Why did they change from that to what's there right now? Because I find what's here, the way you render HTML, I just find it quite horrible.
Okay, I think that's interesting that you said that. I felt the same way.
And that HTML argument there all of a sudden is not a stream anymore. It's a tagged hierarchy.
It's 10, actually.
Or it's a 10 or
So the reason it's like this is if you take the head on your screen and you pick up a pen, when you call this anchor, you essentially say, I'm going to pick up the anchor pen and then going to write it. So you can do things like here such as property at title put color. Right? And what that will do is it will put out an attribute on page for title, that will say hello, which will give me hot. And then I can do on context menu something else. And that will allow me to do right-click behavior on the element. So the reason it's like this is because I can recognize that an element is comprised of many bits. And the combination of what you're going to use is going to vary quite often.
That was done just fine in the functional way they had before.
I don't know if that's strictly true.
Actually, one thing that I would have really preferred, for example, for that argument to be a stream, and the HTML rendering framework to be completely decoupled from Seaside. I don't know why it's done.
This is actually, this HTML tool here is a render of some sort. And it can be
okay, so you can plug it
HTML
somewhere.
render, an RSS render. So you can make all kinds of
Yeah.
In fact, there is a streaming version of the HTML render which doesn't allow you to backtrack in any way, shape, or form.
So I assume that you can set the renderer somewhat higher up. That's what you're saying.
On any component, you can set the renderer class.
Oh, okay.
And really change it. In fact, when you go from Seaside 2.6 to 2.7, you had to specify the renderer class to the new renderer to use the index, and then they swapped it so that the default renderer was the new renderer, and if you went to the old renderer, you had to specify. Now in 2.8, the old renderer is gone. So you've only got the new renderer. But, there's RSS renderings, and there's someone's hooked up to Google Earth and in the VNL renderer.
Could you use JavaScript in the page? The HTML, I guess, somewhere?
So you might have missed that part of the presentation, but where we were doing things like Ajax callbacks, the Smalltalk code is generating a piece of JavaScript. We'll do that. Just click on here. On the context menu, you can go HTML effect online. So effect will create an SU factory, which is an SU effect class, and then the highlight call will give us back a method that's the highlight Ajax method, and when this renders out on the page, it turns into JavaScript. Alternatively, we could simply write JavaScript straight in.
Right on.
Yeah. So these the Scriptaculous library is essentially a JavaScript builder. Any other questions? I know it's a lot to absorb.
So your assertion of Scriptaculous being a JavaScript builder, is it dynamic builder or static? Is it build what you need at the time and then just execute it?
For the Seaside Scriptaculous library, it's built at runtime. So you can build in JavaScript application. Yep.
So with your web velocity project, you want those new customers to basically, so you're moving the cognition of web development into a Smalltalk framework, right? The web development is done into Smalltalk from there, right? And the quality that you find into that is, well, there's the tools and it's simpler. It seems simpler from what I've
Yeah,
you get less like.
You get all the regular Smalltalk events too, less code, more coherent.
But how? But then therefore, like, and I guess again, I'm just chatting. My question is, how are you going to get those web developers to swallow the Smalltalk pill? You know, like in the same way that those C or C++ or Java developer never really swallowed this pill when we showed that to them.
Just don't give them a pill of it. What you do is you give them this environment and you give them documentation and examples of how to do this. You never say you write the Smalltalk, you just say if you want to put an anchor on the screen, this is how you do it.
I mean, one of the reasons that people didn't, C-type developers didn't like the weird Smalltalk syntax compared to C. Well, when you're dealing with people who already swallowed Perl, Python, JavaScript, and Ruby, I don't think syntax is an obstacle.
It's really about focusing it. I mean, before we could say, you want to do web development, it's easy. Just start Visual Workflow, Seaside part. Just in that one sentence, there's a whole process that a lot of people want to get right? Now the answer is going to be to start with the velocity. You button this will generate the easy button, and you go from there, right? And then
It sounds like what you're
you
saying.
press the make it better button.
Make it better. It randomly generates CSS.
They make it faster, but were you going to address regression testing?
Yeah, okay, thank you. I know that. Yep, definitely.
When you sell web blocks to some web development company, are they then going to train all their web developers to use your product? Are they going to fire all the developers and hire out of Smalltalk programs and teach them Seaside?
Okay. What did they do when they picked up Ruby on Rails?
I think that you're probably going to see only new projects.
Yeah.
You'll see an person asking for 10 years ago.
So I'm running on the unit test right
Which is
now.
going to be easier? So they need to teach a Smalltalk or Seaside, or teach a web developer.
And I think there's
It's
going
a
to
web
be only
developer
startups.
product.
I don't think any of the
That's
projects.
a very good question because there is a whole world of understanding web development that the majority of Smalltalk people have no idea about.
Yeah, I think so.
And it's, it comes down to CSS, HTML, forms, JavaScript, all that stuff. A web developer knows. A good web developer knows. And the Smalltalk bit of it will be pretty easy to learn.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
But if you're old enough and you have gray hair, you remember kicks, and then you say, web development is just mainframe kicks. That is
Interesting analogy. So this is the test runner, the SU2 test runner. This is my development image. There is something broken. This is the SU2 test runner that Travis made for the latest version of Visual Works. It looks pretty, which is one of Travis's good things. And we have built a component for Seaside called Seaside SU2, which websizes Seaside SU2 for testing Seaside components. What does that mean? I can best show that by example. So here's a form component, and on it goes, put out a form, put out some text, put out an equal field for name, a break, put out some text, put out an equal field for age, not a break, a submit button that will display info with the label of display. Okay? So that's a reasonably simple form in Seaside. Then we have form component test, which is a subclass of the Seaside SUnit2 test case, not test case. And its component class is the form component, and it will now inherit the behavior to drive that component as if it were a web graph. Okay. Then each test begins by going through the first page, and then it can assert things about it. Then we assert that the page component's name is null, that the page component's age is null. We create a new form that we're going to respond with, and we fill in the name of Bob, fill in the age for 16, and click the display button. That actually does a HTTP post at that point, and gets back a new page. And it's modeled in such a way that you can do back and forward to test that your state changes the way you want it. Then
So it is going to the server, then it is really.
Yes, it's acting as a web browser. Then we can assert that the page component's name is Smith and the page component's age is 16. So we're going to the underlying Smalltalk object for the page reader. So we get the two. We don't only get the HTML page, but we get the object that produced the page. Okay? So then, after we've confirmed that our object model is correct, we can then confirm that the H3 is text, and this right here is from an XPath, and XPath allows you to navigate through XML structures. So the page is brought back as an XHTML page, you transform it into an XML DOM tree, and then you can log it with XPath. So here we're finding the first H3 and getting its text, and getting the first bit out of that in this text, and checking to see if it has the right display string as per the rendering of the form component. So we're testing that the web page rendered correctly and that our model changed correctly. And that's how you drive testing of Seaside components.
Are people using this for like test-driven development? Any others? It's just
This is new. We're using it so far. So in terms of this technique, though, people have been using this sort of technique for a while. There's Seaside testing. It was just something called Seaside testing in Squeak that is like this, but much heavier, more heavyweight in terms of how you use it, what's underneath it to achieve it. And for that, in previous web frameworks, we did like this as well. So thanks for bringing that back up again, because I wanted to show that.
Do you have any comments on, do you know much about Glass?
I know enough about it, I hope.
I mean, is there a non-commercial,
There's a free version of Glass coming out, but it's restricted in terms of CPUs and the amount of gigabytes of data you can do.
You only get 2 sessions.
2 sessions. And an extra session for your Garbage
Two.
Glass
That'd be the right
is the Gemstone Linux Apache Seaside Smalltalk solution. Glasses.
Do they have to release their development tools as well?
They run that. So what happens is you get a VMware image as your Glass image that's running Linux that has Squeak running it. And the Squeak tools are hooked up to the Gemstone server.
Because there used to be a Squeak gem builder, right?
Yeah, well, essentially what they have, they can
long time ago.
well, they will import the code out of Squeak directly into Gemstone, and it can run there.
so it's an appliance?
Right.
Well, that is one mechanism. The appliance is mostly because it's only available in their 64-bit version.
Yes, 64
And since not everyone has 64-bit version, but they can give you a VMware appliance that thinks it's 64-bit and will run on non-64-bit machines for people to play.
That's available now, or is it?
No, I think it's still soon. But actually, this brings up a very important topic for people who are interested in this, that we have an offer from Gemstone to have with James Foster. Probably we're looking at February 5th. Come and talk at the user group and answer all kinds of questions.
So that may be our next meeting if we don't have one before that. February 5th.
Yeah.
Great time to have someone from
California. Portland.
It's gonna be hard to do, invite people over, only when it's snowing heavily.
Well, that's where
Well, Bernie had it the other way.
you got less than a 50% chance of getting some.
Yeah, if we don't invite them in July.
Okay, I'm gonna
No,
say,
we
in that case, I'm gonna say thanks everyone. Thank you very much.